I am not stupid, you know. They cannot make things like that yet.
Released in 1984, The Terminator is a subversive thriller that puts a woman at the center of an apocalyptic conflict. Standing alongside Alien and Blade Runner, the film is foundational to dark science fiction, marking a cinematic shift away from the optimistic space operas and far-fetched fantasies toward a grittier era. Unlike Ridley Scott's Twin Visions, James Cameron's classic brought this darkness into a recognizable present: the urban streets, parking garages, diners, and nightclubs of modern America. The future was no longer relegated to a dystopian metropolis or a distant starship. It was much closer to home, merging elements of a high-concept slasher with his nightmarish vision of a knife-wielding robot torso. Cameron showcased his early talent for making pulpy science fiction concepts feel serious, drawing inspiration from the Outer Limits episode Soldier and the pacing and aesthetics of Walter Hill's The Driver. He crafted a haunting neo-noir thriller steeped in science fiction. At the center of Cameron's urban nightmare is Sarah Connor, an ordinary waitress caught in a fatalistic triangle between two naked time travelers. On one side is the T-800 cyborg assassin. On the other side stands Kyle Reese, a soldier desperate to protect Sarah from the machine.
Like a robot?
Not a robot. Cyborg.
From the start, the Terminator moves through the film with nihilistic clarity. Bullets, burns, wounds, nothing elicits a flicker of distress nor distracts it from its purpose. The pursuit, juxtaposed through tight pacing and intercutting, unfolds in glaring contrast. Sarah and Kyle are a mess. Every encounter leaves them more battered, their agony bleeding through the screen as they drag themselves forward. Even the love scene is tear-soaked and painful. It's this contrast between the cold, impervious machine and the fragile, suffering humans that binds the film's more outlandish elements together, bringing realism to its B-movie premise while tapping into our fears about technology's advance, inhuman and always moving forward. While T2 is the more influential film, almost single-handedly reinventing the action blockbuster, T1's reliance on atmospheric tension and horror makes it feel like a different cinematic universe. The shift in focus from T1 to T2 set a precedent that the franchise has struggled to balance. Subsequent entries have leaned into T2's action-heavy, effects-driven approach, losing much of the original's horror and realism. As a result, the franchise has struggled to recapture the magic that made the original Terminator so compelling, instead favoring increasingly elaborate set pieces and a less than subtle reliance on Arnold as comic relief. Even as many of its groundbreaking elements have become cliché, it's hard to overstate the Terminator's significance within science fiction. Alongside Alien, it pioneered the concept of a strong female lead, showcasing Sarah's evolution from victim to steward of humanity's future. Decades later, The Terminator remains a benchmark in sci-fi cinema, its influence dripping through everything from Robocop to the video game Helldivers.
I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine! Ah!
Sandwiched between Total Recall and Predator, Paul Michael Glazer's 1987 film The Running Man is often dismissed as yet another vehicle for Schwarzenegger's brand of anabolic individualism. It is, after all, a movie about a muscle-bound Kämpfer fighting to overthrow a corrupt and often cartoonishly evil mega-corporation. Yet, despite Arnold's overwhelming presence, the film stands out as one of the more prescient satires of the decade, predicting everything from the rise of reality television to the use of manipulated video footage in propaganda. The Running Man is the rare satire that often doesn't feel like one. On the one hand, it critiques totalitarian control, media manipulation, and the commodification of violence. On the other, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger in his Herculean prime, quipping one-liners as he slices his way through a rogues gallery of flamboyant villains with ridiculous names like Sub-Zero and Dynamo.
Here is Sub-Zero! Now, Plane Zero!
In a sense, the film critiques excess while being excessive, tackling the dehumanizing effects of violent and spectacle-driven entertainment, while simultaneously reveling in spectacular violence and over-the-top action. While lacking the subtlety of contemporary satires like Robocop, The Running Man compensates through the amplification of societal ills. It depicts a future where corporate greed and government corruption fuse into a garish gladiatorial monster, feasting on the masses' appetite appetite for violence. At the center of this abomination is Damon Killian, the Running Man's puppet master and on-air host. With a flick of his wrist, he transforms Ben Richards, a former police officer turned rebel, into a monster for the viewing public, twisting footage to depict Richards massacring the very civilians he refused to kill. Through Richards, we're shown a world of extreme social division, a visual dichotomy between opulent wealth and abject poverty, with desolate housing and trash-strewn streets juxtaposed against gleaming skyscrapers and luxurious penthouses. The network's programming highlights these inequalities, with desperate contestants literally fighting for survival to amuse a complacent audience. While Schwarzenegger carries the film, Maria Conchita Alonso and Richard Dawson elevate it beyond its campy premise. Alonso brings a fierce determination to Amber Mendez, crafting a character with genuine grit and comedic resourcefulness. Her journey from complicit bystander to active rebel provides a vital feminine contrast in a film otherwise awash in testosterone. Similarly, Dawson, drawing on his real-world experience as a game show host, is nothing short of magnetic as Damon Killian. He's the ultimate foil to Schwarzenegger's blunt force style, a villain whose weapon is not brute strength, but the insidious manipulation of truth and public opinion. Though it lacks the gritty realism of the Stephen King novel it's based on, the film has proven to be a remarkably prophetic piece of speculative cinema. Its odd mix of satire and action has made it an underappreciated cult classic, more akin to Rollerball than Robocop.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Few films embody a gimmicky premise, quite like the 1957 film The Fly, a classic monster movie about a scientist who accidentally turns himself into, well, a humanoid fly. In David Cronenberg's 1986 remake, this seemingly one-note horror concept would undergo a remarkable metamorphosis, transforming from its gimmick-laden origins into a serious, subversive commentary.
You can't penetrate beyond society's sick, grey fear of the flesh.
At the heart of Cronenberg's remake is Seth Brundle, a brilliant and eccentric scientist on the verge of a breakthrough that could change the world. He's perfected a device that can instantaneously teleport matter from one telepod to another. There's just one problem. It can't handle living tissue. In fact, it horrifically mangles any living thing sent through it. That is, until a chance encounter with journalist Veronica Quaife. After a night of passion, Seth realizes the computer is misinterpreting living tissue as an inanimate object. It doesn't understand the poetry of the flesh, the nuances that make living matter different. With his solution in hand, Brundle is eager to take the next step in his experiments. Unfortunately, his budding romance with Veronica hits a snag when he mistakenly believes she's getting back together with her creepy old boyfriend. Drunk and jealous, Brundle impulsively decides to test the teleportation machine on himself. And in a Frankensteinian twist of fate, a common housefly slips into the telepod unnoticed. What follows is the closest thing we'll get to a Cronenbergian superhero flick, where Brundle first experiences the fantastic stages of a young Spider-Man, then undergoes a surreal metamorphosis that becomes a tragic allegory for human fragility and unintended consequences.
You're changing, Seth. Everything about you is changing.
The relationship between Veronica and Seth plays out as an inverse of the traditional Beauty and Beast story, where love and acceptance occur before Seth's physical transformation into his monstrous form. While not uncommon in the genre, Cronenberg gives us a realistic depiction of this dynamic, showing us the impact of illness on relationships and identity by exaggerating the stakes to a horrifying degree. What makes this approach truly subversive is the complete lack of romanticism. Seth reacts to his unfolding calamity with a sort of detached irony.
I'm becoming Brundle Fly.
While Veronica maintains her agency, never lovesick nor blindly devoted to the monster.
Do you understand me? I don't want it in my body.
In contrast to conventional horror films, the romance dies before it truly begins. Veronica's reaction to Seth's monstrous transformation doesn't lead to a greater understanding or acceptance of his inner beauty. Instead, we're left with a tragedy that offers no finality, an ending that deepens the existential horror rather than resolving it. The authentic, real-world connection between Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis amplifies the film's emotional impact, creating a transcendent work often seen as a metaphor for degenerative diseases, from cancer to AIDS, and the impact these conditions have on those around them. It's no wonder outlets such as Time, Inverse, and Empire have it on their lists of greatest science fiction films of all time.
It's back. Big is back, because bigger is better. 6000 SUX, an American tradition.
In the twilight of the 1980s, Paul Verhoeven's Robocop crashed through the silver screen, its titanium-plated exterior gleaming with the promise of a high-octane sci-fi thriller, cleverly concealing a subversive payload of satire. What could have been a formulaic, gimmicky sci-fi action film became a surgical dissection of American excess, its cybernetic scalpel slicing through the bloated corpus of the decade's politics. Verhoeven's critique targets every facet of 1980s America, serving up a funhouse mirror to the era's overzealous boardrooms, sensationalized news, and vapid consumerism, with Robocop himself symbolizing the dark comedy of an increasingly militarized police force. These themes converge in a dystopian vision of America, set against the real-world backdrop of a proud industrial city facing an uncertain future. Detroit, once the beating heart of American industry, now lies gutted and sparking like a derelict corpse of a once great industrial machine. In this decaying metropolis, megacorporation Omni-Consumer Products exerts its parasitic dominance, siphoning what little remains from the city's crumbling infrastructure and desperate populace, all while plotting to build a new techno-fascist city over the ruins of old Detroit. Enter Alex Murphy, a good cop in a bad town, whose grisly demise and subsequent resurrection as Robocop echoes a passion play with an iconoclastic twist. Where classic heroes rise to redeem humanity, Robocop rises to serve corporate interests. His prime directives a calculated perversion of moral imperatives, with built-in loopholes for OCP's corporate elites. Yet, like his heroic predecessors, Robocop's journey is one of sacrifice, death, and rebirth, culminating in an examination of transhumanism and the implications of merging humans with machines. Murphy's fragmented memories and his struggle against his programming manifest as an existential crisis.
Murphy, it's you.
With poignant scenes of Robocop revisiting his former home, serving as stark reminders of his lost humanity, his family now ghostly fragments in the hard drive of his mind. Peter Weller's nuanced performance captures that identity struggle, balancing machine-like stoicism with human vulnerability. He conveys depth even behind a metal mask. His robotic, almost laconic delivery is both authoritative and tinged with the emotional remnants of his past life.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
He's like an old Western lawman dropped into a dystopian future, completely oblivious to the absurdity of his actions.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
Nancy Allen as Murphy's partner Lewis helps ground the film in realism. She's the emotional anchor, the human counterpoint to Murphy's surreal journey of self-discovery, expressing the raw emotion of his unfolding tragedy. In the end, Robocop's blend of ultra-violence, dark humor, and subversive social commentary became a template for future sci-fi films, inspiring a generation of filmmakers and storytellers like Neil Blomkamp to use speculative fiction as a vehicle for cultural satire, cementing the film's status not just as a cult classic, but as a prophetic work that continues to reverberate in an era that feels like it's only just catching up to Verhoeven's dystopian vision.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
They Live may have been marketed as a B-movie sci-fi action flick, but John Carpenter had grander ambitions for his 1988 cult classic. Adapting Ray Nelson's short story, 8 O'Clock in the Morning, and comic book Nada, Carpenter saw an opportunity to elevate science fiction cinema beyond superficial genre cliches. He transformed these sources into a vehicle for cultural commentary, taking on the rise in homelessness and growing inequality under Reaganism. To embody this critique, Carpenter introduces us to John Nada, a down-on-his-luck drifter in Los Angeles, a city that doesn't seem to want or need him.
There's nothing available for you right now.
Nada finds temporary refuge in a homeless encampment. It's here, amid society's displaced and forgotten, that he stumbles into a grand conspiracy when he finds a pair of mysterious sunglasses that reveal a horrifying truth. Earth has been secretly colonized by aliens masquerading as the ruling class. Through these lenses, the underlying ideology of consumerism is laid bare in stark black and white. Each detailed matte painting and prop reveals the true meaning behind everyday products, transforming billboards and magazines into blunt commands. The result is a powerful visual metaphor, exposing the skeletal greed beneath society's colorful veneer. But the glasses do more than reveal hidden messages. They also unmask the otherworldly faces of the ruling elite. And these are no ordinary invaders or classic body snatchers. Instead, Carpenter gives us skeletal zombies, dead-eyed and hollow, as if they subsist solely on the exploitation of those around them.
What's your problem?
His decision to move away from the frog-like creatures of Ray Nelson's story and towards parasitic fiends brilliantly captures the rotten core of the system they are meant to represent. In many ways, Carpenter's aliens are the ultimate capitalists, exploiting Earth's resources while keeping humanity docile through subliminal messaging. And breaking free from this control is no easy task, as exemplified by one of the film's most memorable sequences, the iconic fight between Nada and Frank. It embodies Nada's desperate attempt to pull Frank out of the sea of ideology, wrestling to show him the faint signal of truth within their manufactured reality. Despite having a relatively inexperienced lead actor, They Live endures as both an iconic cult classic and a powerful cultural critique. It's a scathing satire wrapped in the guise of pulpy science fiction, inviting us, like Nada, to put on a pair of special sunglasses and see the world as it truly is.